Welcome back to another Mobilitics video. Today we're taking a look at all of the changes we know about so far for patch 12.7 that's coming next week. This patch preview is a fairly big one, and lots of champions are being affected, so let's take a look at these changes and how they may impact the game and the meta. Before we get started, don't forget to click the link in the description to check out our website. You can find our tier list, champion guides, combos, tips and tricks, and all sorts of other super useful information and advice to take in with you when going into your next game. So let's get straight into it and start off with those champion buffs. Gwen is finally receiving some love after having an absolutely appalling win rate since her nerfs a few patches ago. Gwen was very strong for quite some time, but a few nerfs too many and she became one of the lowest performing champions in the entire game. Gwen's E cooldown refund is being buffed from 50 to 60% and her ultimate cooldown is now lower at lower ranks. Hopefully these changes should help Gwen be a little bit more relevant. This champion is very hard to balance due to insane scaling, and if you make her too OP in the early game, she'll just spike too early and win way too many games. These changes should make her early game a little bit more tolerable without making her broken. Pantheon is a pretty awesome champion. He looks like a beast and he's got a really cool fantasy and concept, but unfortunately he just falls short when it comes to actual viability. Finally, he's getting some changes though, and let's actually see how much difference they make. First off, Pantheon's Q is now a longer range but it's thinner. This means it's going to be used more for sniping off enemies and also better for long range poke. However, it's going to be a little bit less impactful for those close range AoE damage fights. A lot of players might actually think this is a bit of a nerf, so it'll be interesting to see how it turns out when it goes live. Pantheon's E now doesn't slow Pantheon when he's moving backwards. This is a pretty awesome quality of life change, and Pantheon mains will be very happy with this one. Pantheon's ultimate Grand Starfall now falls 0.25 seconds faster, which isn't enough to make it OP, but it will help him out marginally when hitting this ability. Pantheon's ultimate has for the most part been used for its mobility and its global presence rather than its actual damage, as it's so easy to avoid unless you're stuck in crowd control. This 0.25 seconds is not going to do too much to change that dramatically, but it should help out. Finally, Pantheon's health per 5 is being reduced from 9 to 7.5, which is likely just to compensate a bit for these other little buffs. Interestingly, Yasuo and Yone are also both receiving buffs. This may be a bit of a follow-up after some nerfs to them and some additional nerfs recently to lifestyle items, but as we all know, this could make them absolutely busted again. Yasuo is receiving a substantial buff to his base health, going from 490 to 520, and his ultimate cooldown is now lower at lower ranks. Yone is getting a lower cooldown on his ultimate too, but instead at later ranks. The terrible twins have always been hard to balance, so let's see what happens with these changes as it may send them over the edge. Wukong is receiving some buffs, which is intriguing because despite this champion's fairly low popularity, he actually performs pretty well in the majority of games. He's already a fantastic duelist and wins a surprising amount of early game matchups. Wukong's Q cooldown is now lower at all ranks, which with a bit of ability haste could feel a little bit too spammable. Wukong's W now has a shorter cooldown at later ranks, but the best part is it can now go over walls. This is going to be amazing and should definitely modernise Wukong as a champion and make him far more interesting. Wukong's E now deals 180% damage to monsters instead of 150, and his E AP ratio is now up to 100% from 80. Overall, these changes are going to make a significant difference to Wukong in both the top and the jungle roles. Recently though, whenever Riot have buffed a champion's jungle clear, they've become absolutely broken, and when you combine that with the fact that Wukong can jump over walls with his clone, this could make his ganks actually really hard to predict. I feel that Wukong may be the dark horse of this patch and actually come out insanely strong from these buffs. Neeko has been doing really well since her buffs back in the earlier part of the season, however she's still very underplayed. Neeko's W damage is going up at later ranks from 50 to 130 to 50 to 170, and her W movement speed is also going up at later ranks alongside it. Neeko already has a pretty juicy win rate, so let's see if this makes her even more abusable. Gangplank is a niche champion and those first timers can be pretty useless. However, the Gangplank one-trick sensations are absolutely next level, and the damage and scaling this champion has with those barrels and those crits is unbelievable. It seems Riot want to see more of this champion though with these unexpected buffs. Gangplank's passive damage is going up by a huge amount from 55 to 225 to 55 to 310, and his W mana cost is also being lowered at all ranks. Gangplank mains should be very chuffed with these surprising buffs. Kalista is next up, and yes, there is a champion in League of Legends called Kalista, just in case you forgot. Kalista's base mana and movement speed are being buffed, and so is her attack speed per level. Kalista's been completely forgotten about so far this season, so finally it's time to give her some buffs. Let's see if this brings her back to the Rift and see if it makes her a bit more relevant again. Lillia is receiving some more buffs too, and she's a pretty underrated and underplayed champion that already seems quite impossible to play against if the Lillia knows what they're doing. A good Lillia player is actually very scary, but there's just not many of them, and the majority of Lillias don't really do too much. Lillia's passive healing is going up from a 12% AP ratio to 20%. Her W damage is also being buffed by 10 at all ranks. Lillia is on the verge of being a very strong champion, so let's see if these changes are enough to tip her over the edge or if she still needs a bit more love. Finally, the last buff of this patch is going to Karthus. His Q now deals 10% more damage to monsters, just encouraging more people to pick him up in the jungle. Let's hope this doesn't just improve those bot lane Karthuses taking all of the jungle camps as well as every lane's minions though. Karthus is a very underpicked champion in the majority of ranks, but absolutely dominates high elo bot lanes if you can play it correctly. Now let's move on to those nerfs. Guess what? Zeri is getting more nerfs and more changes as Riot desperately try to figure out how on earth they are ever going to balance this champion. Despite Zeri's win rate dropping significantly already for the majority of ranks, in pro play she's still absolutely insane. So Zeri's AD per level is being nerfed, her HP per level is being buffed, and her base armor is also being nerfed. Zeri's Q damage is being nerfed significantly, and now it only applies on hits once per cast, as currently it can apply multiple on hits if you do manage to hit multiple targets. Zeri's Q now only stacks her ultimate and reduces her E cooldown one time per cast too, as previously it could stack multiple times for each champion hit. Critical strikes now add an extra ultimate stack and reduce the E cooldown an additional time. Zeri's W base damage is also being nerfed, but the AD and AP ratios are being buffed slightly to help her scale. Her E cooldown is being reverted away from a flat amount and instead moving to 28 to 22 seconds depending on the rank. Zeri's ultimate cooldown is now longer at lower levels but quicker at max rank. It seems Riot are continuing to focus on letting Zeri scale and still nerfing her early game. These nerfs will hit all of Zeri's build, but definitely should hurt the Bruiser path more than the crit build. I feel like in the long run we're going to see the Bruiser build die out as Riot keep on introducing these changes, and it seems they want to make her a crit based hyper carry. Especially now that you don't get all of those stacks when hitting up a group team and instead get double stacks when you crit. Another champion that's being nerfed yet again because of pro play is Ryze. Ryze has one of the lowest win rates in the entire game at all ranks, but remains OP only in the competitive scene because of how insane he can be in a team environment. It's about time Ryze got a complete rework to be honest, as all he gets right now is nerf upon nerf because of how broken he is in pro play. Ryze's Q mana ratio is now 2% down from 3 and his Q AP ratio is being buffed by 5% to compensate slightly. All this seems to be doing is encouraging pros to build AP rather than full tank. Not much more to say really, as Ryze just sucks for the majority of players unfortunately. Lee Sin is also receiving some nerfs, and despite his average and fairly low win rate at most ranks, in high elo he's still performing better than ever. Lee Sin's base AD is going down by 2 and his Q1 and Q2 damage is being nerfed by 5. Now these nerfs are not going to gut this champion by any means, but will make a small difference. Jayce is also receiving some nerfs, which is yet another champion that only truly has that much success in higher elos where people really understand how this champion works. Jayce's base HP is being nerfed along with his base armor. His HP and armor per level are being buffed marginally to compensate. So that's the nerfs out the way, but the only champion receiving adjustments this patch is Rengar. Rengar has been absolutely everywhere since those changes that came in last patch. He's been pretty broken to say the least, and that crit build now deals an unbelievable amount of damage. Unfortunately though, they're not really doing too much to change that. The only damage they're reducing this patch is his Q damage to structures, so unfortunately he's still going to one-shot you. They're also buffing his W damage to monsters, meaning he's going to clear the jungle even quicker. I'm not too sure these Rengar changes are what most people would have wanted, but for now they'll have to do. So that's all of the champion changes covered for this patch, and now we're going to take a look at a few system changes. For the system buffs we've got Umbral Glaive and Abyssal Mask. Umbral Glaive is now 100 less gold, and the cooldown is now 35 seconds down from 45. This item is pretty underrated as it is, but I guess unless you're a Pyke main you probably haven't really built it before. So now it's cheaper and it's usable more often, we could see this become very popular on mid lane or jungle assassins, allowing them to get a really good value for money item early on and help to clear wards easier. Abyssal Mask is having its max magic resist shred buff from 20 to 25, and its shred ratio buff from 1% bonus health to 1.2%. Honestly, I forgot this item existed, so that explains why it's getting these buffs. Let's see if it makes much difference. Finally, let's finish off with the system nerfs. Winter's Approach and Fimbulwinter are now 100 more gold and have 50 less health. This item has been a bit overpowered on certain champions, Ryze, so it is expected to see a nerf here. Moonstone Renewer is having its healing and shielding power per stack nerfed too. It's going from 7% per stack to a max of 35% down to 6% per stack to a max of 30%. Sustain and healing is a very prominent part of League of Legends at the moment, so this nerf is welcome. Gale Force is another item being nerfed. Its cooldown is being changed from 90 seconds to 110 seconds. This nerf is actually really huge and will stop so many champions building it just for that mobility that it provides. Now that Ravenous Hunter is gone, maybe with this nerf, Ingenious Hunter will be the best one to go for to reduce that Gale Force cooldown. This item has been a very strong item for this whole season so far, so it was expected that it would eventually get nerfed. And to finish off, Time Warp Tonic is also being nerfed. Pretty hard too actually. It's having its immediate potion restore nerfed from 50% to 30% and its bonus movement speed nerfed from 5% to 4%. Sometimes Time Warp Tonic felt like having a summoner heal, so this nerf definitely feels justified. Well, that covers just about everything that's coming that we know about so far for patch 12.7 next week. What do you guys think of these changes, and who do you think is going to be the most broken champion this patch? Let us know in the comments. My vote goes to Wukong. That's all from us here at Mobalytics, and don't forget to check out our website by clicking the link in the description. Thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.